Snake eyes. Maybe. I wasn't paying attention. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you're meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am an independent theatre critic based here in the UK, and I am a stagey content creator here on YouTube. And today, I am going to be talking to you about the brand new semi-immersive revival of the classic musical comedy Guys and Dolls. This opened just last night at the Bridge Theatre in London. I got to see its final preview performance the night before opening night, and today I will be bringing you my full review. And there's so much we need to talk about in today's video. We've seen Guys and Dolls done many times in London. How does this compare with previous productions? This is a very different cast in many ways to the cast that we've seen before. What are their performances like? But most importantly, this is a very different production because it is semi-immersive, and the staging of this production is like nothing I have ever seen before, and quite possibly nothing like you've ever seen before. Certainly, it's Guys and Dolls done in a completely brand new way. So I'm going to be talking to you about what it's like to be part of the standing audience around the moving stage for Guys and Dolls at the Bridge Theatre. Stay tuned, all of that is coming up. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more videos and reviews just like this one. And you can also sign up to become one of my YouTube members at the link in the description for just £2.99 a month if you would like to see early and exclusive content from my channel. The second link in the description will let you sign up for a free account with Show Score so that you can rate and review shows for yourselves. Now, let's talk about Guys and Dolls. This isn't even going to cover my face. It's a very thin program. Let's just do a... I don't think this is working. So, if you know nothing about Guys and Dolls, this is a classic musical comedy. It has been revived a great many times. It has been adapted for film. If you don't know the show, then you might just know some of its songs. It contains the songs Luck Be a Lady and Sit Down You're Rockin' the Boat, and it does not contain the song Guys and Dolls. We're just a crazy bunch of guys and dolls, because The Simpsons made that up. That is not in the show. Do I still sing it every time I see the words Guys and Dolls? Yes. Yes, I do. So from when this was announced, we knew that it was going to be a semi-immersive staging. And that's something that this venue, the Bridge Theatre, which is not that old a venue in the UK, has done before. They've previously done immersive productions of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream that became more like a sort of a joyous, jubilant rave, and an immersive production of another of Shakespeare's plays, Julius Caesar, in which the crowd became this additional character within the show, and it became this sort of a participatory community mob feel. Now, when I say immersive, this is a word that is getting used a lot, and there are various different degrees to which something can actually be immersive. You have shows like Sleep No More in New York and like the Punch Drunk shows here in the UK, where you get to be a lot more participatory within the show and choose your own adventure and sort of navigate freely. And this is not necessarily that, because this is still a structured book musical, but being performed in a way that surrounds you in the action a lot more. And again, I say surrounds, it doesn't, strictly speaking, it just puts you much closer to it. This particular style of theatre has been popularised by the recent revival of Cabaret, playing at the Playhouse Theatre, aka the Kit Kat Club, here in London. It won a host of Olivier Awards, it has had tremendous critical and financial success, and it is a formula that we are seeing producers beginning to want to emulate. And I do think that there is a direct influence from that revival to this production of Guys and Dolls. I think the idea is to take a classic with a popular title and stage it in a newly compelling, exciting way with extra elements of entertainment that justify this slightly inflated ticket price. The new revival of Oklahoma does a similar thing. Newsies at the Troubadour Theatre. A lot of these shows newly opening are offering this additional immersive element. But what exactly does that mean for Guys and Dolls? Well, let me tell you. So other than a large neon sign that says the title of the show, which is not something that normally happens at the Bridge Theatre, there is nothing in the foyer area to really prepare you for the world of the show. Unlike with some of the other shows, like Cabaret, where the whole theatre has been taken over and you're meant to feel transported instantly to this 1930s Berlin nightclub. You're very much still in the foyer of the Bridge Theatre until you enter the auditorium. But the moment you do enter the auditorium, suddenly you are transported to New York. And you're transported there with lights and with sounds and with people selling hot dogs and pretzels, and all sorts of other things going on. But the degree to which you are involved in this depends on where you are sitting. So there are two types of ticket that you can get for Guys and Dolls. You can either get a seated ticket at one of the 3 gallery levels within the venue, or you can get an immersive standing ticket. The seating goes around all 4 sides of the venue. It's kind of like a large boxing ring, and if you're standing, you are within that boxing ring down on the flat floor. And like I said, there are bright neon lights overhead. You can hear traffic noises. There are actual traffic lights flashing walk and don't walk. You can hear subway trains going overhead very loudly. And you have members of the front of house team dressed in period style, giving out free hats. You can get a free hat. We got given a free hat, and you've been looking at it this whole time. You may not have realized, because Beric the Phantom Bear is wearing it behind me. That is a free fedora that we were given at Guys and Dolls that you can take home with you afterwards. You also had the chance to buy pretzels and Coca-Cola cans and hot dogs. Like, there was a lot going on. One thing I should note, if you have a standing ticket, you must check all of your coats and bags into the cloakroom prior to the start of the show. You are not allowed to take any coats or bags into the auditorium with you. This was a very easy process when we arrived, but as you might expect, the queue for everyone to then retrieve their things at the end was a little bit longer. Not too long, not intolerably long, but if you're planning to shoot away afterwards, that is something to be mindful of. So then let's talk about the immersive element within the show. As you can tell pretty early once you enter the auditorium, there are these sections of the floor that are going to separate, and essentially you just have a series of platforms with this large central square section and 4 arms coming out of its various corners that are going to lift up off of the ground. And throughout the production, these go up and down at different points because they don't consistently use the entire stage area. They use different parts of it, and different parts of it will collapse, and the audience can then move around this. As one element goes down, you are ushered by the very hard-working stage management team to go and move forward and go up to the new front of the stage, and then they will move you backwards at other times when a new section is meant to go up. It's all a very carefully organized process, but it can be a little bit overwhelming and overstimulating. I am not the biggest fan of immersive shows. I very much like to just be a fly on the wall and watch what is going on, so I don't like to be too participatory. There's parts at the beginning of this show where the cast are beginning to come out and walking around and making conversation with you. That's not necessarily my jam, but I appreciate watching it. And I'm not someone who necessarily thrives being in crowds, but I did appreciate being that close to the action and feeling so involved. There's a handful of other little moments where they particularly involve the standing audience members as well. The whole Havana scene is mostly played on the flat floor until it escalates a little bit, and they give out these little shaky things that you can have, like tassels, and you can shake them around at certain points, and that's really fun. They have dancers and different couples dancing around. It's very hard to see everything in this show and sort of throughout the show. That's a criticism I'll come back to. But certainly in that scene as well, you're better off enjoying what is near to you rather than trying to drink the whole thing in unless you're sat further up the auditorium. At the end of the show, it does a very similar thing to Mamma Mia! The Party, if you're familiar with that show, where the stage lowers after the cast have come out and bowed, and then we have this very brief sort of moment where it turns into a club scene, and the cast will linger on stage and dance around a little bit. There was a conga line, people were interacting and taking a couple selfies, but it just turns into a bit of a disco on the dance floor, and they play a club version of the song Luck Be a Lady that Marisha Wallace has recorded. And that part of it is a really good, fun, uplifting vibe. Certainly that side of things is more fun than the moments where you're in near total darkness being urgently shepherded around by some understandably very intense stage management. So that, I hope, has given you a flavour of what this show is actually like. Let me talk to you now about whether or not I enjoyed it. So I had been planning on filming my video review of this on the night I got back, as I usually do, but I've had to sleep on this one to really make up my mind about it, because I find, having been as part of the standing audience, I've wanted to peel away this layer of wow and awe and sort of the glitz of everything that they did and really look at how they addressed the material and the content of the show. Because the way that it's performed is quite overwhelming. It is a little bit of sensory overload. You have all of these signs, even just in the overture section, you have all of these different levels going up and down, and I was very impressed with the speed with which they managed to create different scenes. You have this level coming up and suddenly it's a barber shop, and there's cast in there spinning round. This other level rises up and it's a cafe, and they've set tables, and there's people arriving on from here, and there's dancers, and then they're rehearsing over here. There's an awful lot going on, and the slickness with which they transition between these different locations and with which they prepare and strike these different sets on these moving set pieces is awe-inspiring. The work that must have gone into planning how they were going to stage all of this, I dare say, was tremendous. But this is all just a entertaining theatrical glaze on the show itself. I still need for the actual content of the show to be just as good and just as impressive. And while it may give you a 5-star experience, is it still a 5-star show when we actually get into it? And my answer to that question is not quite. I do think that the show is really enjoyable, and I do still think I had a slightly warped experience of it. I would be very intrigued to go back and sit in the gallery and see what the experience is like when you don't necessarily feel included as part of that community down on the flat floor. But the cast are very hardworking, they are indefatigable, they are characterized really well, and even though it's material that's a little bit dated, it feels more exciting, it feels fresher, it feels like it has a little bit more of a pulse to it. There are comedy lines in this show that I don't think have been funny for years that are suddenly funny again. Cedric Neal, as nicely manages to make the delivery of his own name funny again when that joke hasn't landed in a very long time. But it certainly had an energy and a vibrancy to it, and the hotbox dance scenes were newly show-stopping, and I really liked the energy of the beginning. I really liked that overture section where we had all of the different levels coming up, and it was just so slick and fast-moving, and it felt just a lot more dynamic than Guys and Dolls has perhaps felt in the past. But this production is still a slave to the script, and we end up in the second act where we have this really long scene where they are shooting craps. That's a dice game that they're playing down in the sewers, and all of that slickness, all of that speed, all of that vitality gets lost a little bit. I'm also not sure if at any point it really presents a compelling argument for why Guys and Dolls is being staged in this way. It's incredibly impressive, but as often as this set seems to provide exciting opportunities to do creative things, it is restrictive, and it's small, and it's claustrophobic, and it makes the choreography on stage feel very busy, and a lot of the staging feel very busy, and like they don't really have enough space to breathe in and to work with. One thing I did like in this production is how they added a little bit of a queer element. Let me tell you how. So Katie Seacombe plays 2 different roles in this production. She gets to play General Cartwright, and she also gets to play Good Time Charlie Bernstein, who is the MC of the entertainment venue, The Hot Box. This is a character that was traditionally male and has been reconceived here as a canonically butch lesbian. I love everything about this. There is a little nod to this at some point during the first act, and I appreciate that. It's a way of nodding to the LGBT community when there's very little else they can do about infusing queer themes into this very dated show. They're not necessarily at liberty to make one of the show's leading characters queer. That being said, when we get to Havana, oh boy. So at the end of the first act, Sky Masterson ends up convincing the upstanding and moral Sarah Brown to go with him for dinner in Havana, Cuba, in order to win the wager that he's entered into with Nathan Detroit. While there, she traditionally sees him dancing with another woman, becomes jealous, and starts a bar fight that ends in a sort of a comic way. On this occasion, the bar they're in Cuba is a different kind of bar. It's a bar with a different kind of clientele, because they're in a gay bar. And Sky Masterson is dancing very provocatively and very eagerly with another man. And Sarah Brown does not take kindly to this, and she gets in a fist fight with a bunch of gays. As I describe it, it sounds odd, but honestly, I really enjoyed this moment. I thought it was, again, another fun and a little bit tongue-in-cheek way of nodding to the LGBT community, who would not normally be included whatsoever in a production of Guys and Dolls, and it seemed to suggest that Sky Masterson in this version was like by Masterson for all intents and purposes, because he was having just a grand old time. A grand old time. He was Havana grand old time. Ah, I tickle myself. So let me talk to you about some of the creative team. So this was directed by Nicholas Heitner, who was also one of the founders of the Bridge Theatre. It's a venue that he founded after he left his position as artistic director of the National Theatre. He has had an illustrious career directing for the stage. And he shows that he understands this show tremendously well. He hits all of the comedic moments, he sort of signposts all of the big emotional beats of the show, and he just delivers everything that you might expect from Guys and Dolls. There is not too much that you wouldn't be expecting. It doesn't surprise you in many ways. I think for what it's worth, this version is also a lot sexier than previous versions of Guys and Dolls. I think it's raunchy, and I think it's passionate, and I think it's fun. It's just fun in a way that a lot of these older shows haven't been fun in a very long time. And it's Guys and Dolls that will maybe also be more applicable to a younger audience while still retaining everything that an older audience would still enjoy about the show. That being said, the one thing that we do seem to be lacking is the emotional impact. And again, I wonder if it's because of the way it's staged that it's a little bit emotionally alienating. I did think after I left, if a show was being staged in proscenium, which is just a traditional staging, I wouldn't tolerate these important emotional beats where a character is turning upstage and you can't see their face. But where it's staged in the round, you have to deal with that because not everyone is going to be able to see everything. There are audiences on all four sides. So at any given moment, some members of the audience are missing something, and so people have to keep staging in different ways. And I did think he was very clever in moving it around. The only part where I became aware of bad sightlines was the song Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat, where the bulk of it is played just in one direction. The choreography is by Arlene Phillips, Dame Arlene Phillips, and it's stunning choreography. It's brilliant. She particularly shines with the hot box dancer girls in putting across their numbers. And like I said, raunchier and sexier and more fun than I have seen those numbers done in a very long time. Still tongue-in-cheek in the way that they choreograph this burlesque situation. It's never inappropriate, but of course it is a little bit suggestive. Those I enjoy very much. I do also love the way that Arlene Phillips choreographs for men, because I think her choreography for men is balletic and stylized, but it's also so masculine and so grounded. And it manages to balance this assertiveness and this grace. We saw it in the Grease revival that she choreographed for, and it has the same kind of energy here. My issue with all of this that became quite prevalent in the Crapshooters Ballet is it does feel very busy and a little bit claustrophobic. The number Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat, she did brilliant things with formations and with chairs and with turning people around, but there were so many chairs on a very small stage, it felt very stuck and cramped. The Crapshooters Ballet has a similar issue, and I just didn't know where to look. Again, if I was in a circle, perhaps it would have been easier, but being down among it and looking up and seeing all of this happening, it was hard to find a focal point in the choreography, and I wanted for there to be a focal point. This is another criticism I have of the visual aspect of the show, is it is very overwhelming and overstimulating, and perhaps this is what they're going for and trying to immerse you in this world. Oh, there's something over here. Oh, have you looked behind me? A scene's just lit up over there. Ah, someone's just crawled up out of a sewer. Oh, I'm getting sprayed with water. It's certainly a unique theatrical experience, and there's lots to enjoy about that, but I do think at the same time it makes it a little bit harder for you to enjoy the show. If you're the kind of person who wants to hang on every single word, that's not necessarily going to be possible in this version, especially if you're on the standing floor and you will occasionally be shepherded around and spoken to by a member of the front of house and stage management teams to move into a different direction because there's a piece of floor coming up or they're trying to move chairs past you. We do have to talk about this incredible set design by Bunny Christie. She is just such a visionary in terms of where creativity and technology meet, and every single set design that she does seems to push the envelope of what she can achieve in a theatrical space a little bit more. It is incredible how slickly this set manages to rise and fall, and all the different sections that divide, the number of different possibilities. I think they use every single combination of platforms that they can at different points throughout this show. It gives you corridors, it gives you open spaces, it gives you closed rooms, it gives you levels, it gives you depth. There are moments where there are slight raises of platforms in order for an actor to fall over one of them. Like, they're very clever things. It's utilized in ingenious ways, and all of the lights that come down from above give you location. You would think with a show in the round, one of their biggest challenges is including set pieces, because anytime you put a set piece on a show staged in the round, you're automatically blocking somebody's sight lines. But in having things that descend from above and just a couple of set pieces placed onto the stage, it creates location very well. At all times, we know exactly where we are. Let's talk now about some of the performances. So Daniel Mays plays Nathan Detroit. He's one of the first characters that we meet, and he hasn't done a tremendous amount of musical theatre, but I think he performs very confidently. There was a moment where he did a little spin on his heels, and I think he was just very game throughout the show. He wasn't conjuring jokes out of thin air with physical comedy like we've seen some predecessors do in this role, but he was charming. He felt like a man of the people. He was sweating away nervously, trying to keep control of the situation throughout the show, and he was believably in love with Miss Adelaide. Miss Adelaide is played here by Marisha Wallace. Now, this is normally a role played by a sort of a seasoned character actress comedienne. Marisha Wallace, a very different type for this role, but a very welcome fit for it as well. She finds completely new jokes in this material that suit her brilliantly. There's a running gag where even though she and Nathan aren't yet married, despite having been engaged for 14 years, she reveals to him early on in the show that she has been telling her mother all this time via a series of letters that they have married, and that the situation has developed and they've now had children. Every time that this comes back up and we add more details, that's probably the funniest material that she gets to work with in the show. And the way she delivers the hotbox numbers, she's so vivacious. She has utter star quality when she is singing and performing. She finds a new kind of a vocal tone that we haven't necessarily heard from her before. It's not this big soulful belty thing that you might associate her with from shows like Waitress and Dreamgirls and Hairspray. She sings in a way that is a lot more classic and feels very comfortable in her voice. Very comfortable. What's interesting is she plays the comedy a little less broadly, and she's actually much more sincere than Miss Adelaide's that we have seen before on the stage. She's not playing it like she's necessarily ditzy, and she's not doing like a particularly squeaky voice. That's something we've heard before. And Adelaide's lament is not laugh a minute, but we do feel a lot more heart with that character than usually we might. So perhaps we're sacrificing one element of the comedy. Maybe we don't laugh quite as much, but we do feel a little bit more. Celinde Schoenmaker plays Sarah Brown. I like how robust she is. I love a soprano leading lady who can also let down her hair, which she absolutely does. Celinde has one of the most incredible voices, where she has this glorious high soprano, but she can also belt to the high heavens. And this score weirdly falls between those two things, because it's not until the very end that we get a delicious soprano moment from her, and I feel like I want there to be a reason why she uses one or the other, because even in one of the first songs we hear her singing, I'll Know, at the very end, in the last few notes, she belts out two of them and then she goes into a soprano head voice situation for the very last note. It sounds lovely. But this is a character who experiences a lot of duality throughout the show, because she's very upright and prim and proper, and then she gets taken to Havana and she has a couple of alcoholic beverages and she literally lets down her hair and tears the sleeve of her dress and gets very raunchy and provocative and really lets loose. That would be a great time for her to belt more and use more chest voice, because she's feeling more free and she's shouting to the heavens and she's not really aware of herself. Then when we see her return to the world which she knows, she can return to a head voice. I would like for there to be reasons why she uses each of those, but it's a little bit interchangeable throughout the show and it's not necessarily specifically governed by her attitude. And I feel like we could connect those two. We could connect the vocal placement to the characterization. We absolutely have to talk about Andrew Richardson as Sky Masterson. He is a revelation in this role and an incredible find. He is hugely charismatic. He's also sweet and charming. He's effortlessly funny. He has the dreamiest baritone singing voice. It's one of those voices that as soon as he started, I was like, how do we not already know about you? How haven't you done 50 concerts at the proms already? Because he's really up there with all of the great tenors and baritones that we know about. He shows himself to be an impeccable leading man in this production. It's an incredible performance from him. I do want to tell you about some highlight moments of the show. The whole Havana sequence was great fun. There was so much energy in it, and it going into the song If I Were a Bell, where Celinde is throwing herself across the stage and she's ripping his shirt open. And like I said, this is Guys and Dolls, where it's unafraid to be fun and provocative and sexy. And they bring in these lampposts, and she's swinging from the lampposts, singing in the rain style over the audience. That's where all of this immersive element really hits its high point. That's probably the most euphoric part of the immersive experience. And certainly in Act 1, the whole thing is more enjoyable and stronger. In Act 2, the staging becomes a little bit more traditional, but the highlight moment of the show is where Cedric Neal stops the show cold with vocal fireworks on Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat. And his vocal delivery of this is so tremendous. My only criticism is that I wish they had done more with the arrangement. It is a little bit of a slower tempo. It's also a little bit more bluesy, but I just wish they had found a way to just let it be completely free at some moments so Cedric could have so much more fun with it. He puts in some glorious riffs. It's delicious vocals from Cedric Neal, as you would expect. I just wish they'd given him even more space to really put his personal stamp on this song. One very brief and lovely little moment I did enjoy before Marry the Man Today, which was also a really great number between the two leading ladies. Marisha sang a second reprise of the song Adelaide's Lament, and it was overlapped by Celinde singing I'll Know, I believe, or I've Never Been in Love Before, one of Sarah's wistful soprano songs from earlier in the show, and I've never heard that included before. I assume that was new for this production. I've never heard it. It was just a little brief moment introducing that scene, but it was very striking, and it had a kind of freshness that the rest of the score didn't. I did think that we could infuse the rest of this score with a little bit of a more contemporary energy. I want it to still sound classic and still sound like Guys and Dolls. I just want the arrangements to be a little bit bolder and more fun and more lively. Whew! But that has been my review of Guys and Dolls at the Bridge Theatre. If you have any questions about this production, let me know in the comments section down below. I'm also thinking about doing another video, maybe after I've seen the show a second time, where I do a bit of a survival guide and I tell you in thorough detail what you can expect and like how to navigate the standing experience at this show, because it is an experience. But I am so intrigued to hear what you all thought of the show. If anyone has been to see this already, let us know in the comments section down below what you thought about it. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more content coming very soon, including many more reviews. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!